The relationship between Mormons and Native Americans during westward expansion is complicated both historically and in the research that is often done on the topic. Jared Farmer, in his article Crossroads of the West, notes that until the late 20th century, relatively few serious U.S. historians, mainly those schooled on the metropolitan East Seaboard, studied post-1844 Mormonism. They ceded that terrain to Western localists, regionalists, and history buffs. This has made the overall understanding of Mormon settlement in the West even more complicated. There are varying camps that have explored the issue, often using conflicting reports and not establishing a true historical account of the events surrounding Mormon Western settlement. As expected, a majority of the research that has been carried out by Mormon researchers, as they have had the greatest access to archived material of the period. Mormon historians have sought to protect the image of their religion and its actions, but have over the past 15 years, they have sought to give greater transparency about their faith and leaders in the faith. Recently, the Mormon Church has opened up a vast area of their archives to outside researchers, giving more researchers access to the information that Mormons have historically protected. However, there are a number of non-Mormon allied academics who have done some research on the topic and drawn their own conclusions. Reviewing updated and current research will allow for me to see differing viewpoints of academics who now have had access to recently released documentation that might give additional insights into Native American and Mormon relations, and hopefully that they can be paired with Mormon scripture in order to understand their ideas and connections to the Native people who they consider part of a band of transplanted Israelites. In Matthew Dougherty's paper, None Can Deliver, Imagining Lamanites and Feeling Mormon, 1837 to 1847, noted that there is already a strong historiography on the imagined relationship between early Mormons and Lamanites. Many historians, however, stopped their analysis of this relationship after remarking that Lamanite prophecies caused early Mormons to be sympathetic towards American Indians. In his paper, Dougherty does explain the relationship between early Mormons and Native Americans. Dougherty argues that Mormon belief about millennialism is what was the real driving force behind their desire to convert the natives. He argues, using writings from Parley Pratt, a prominent Mormon leader of the era, that the Mormons wanted to raise an army of natives in order to wage war against their enemies that had expelled them from their homes in the East and usher in the millennium. Dougherty has interesting ideas, but most of his paper is focused solely around the ideas of Pratt and not around either Joseph Smith or Brigham Young, who would have been the true Mormon leaders of the era. Jared Farmer also wrote a paper exploring Native American and Mormons, focusing on the idea that the native population was a lost Israeli tribe. Farmer's paper, Displaced from Zion, Mormon and Indians in the 19th Century, also explores the Mormon minimalist view that they were there to save and convert the native people, and thus bring them back to Christ's fulfilling prophecy. With this, Mormons had hoped that native peoples could join them and create a force to discourage harassment from mobs and potentially the U.S. government. This paper focuses more on the actual writings and ideas of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, thus adding a more authoritative approach as to actual Mormon thought and theology on how the narrative fit into the scriptures. Farmer does an excellent job quoting from these leaders and sourcing them compared to Dougherty. However, Farmer fails to effectively close out his research paper by posting three possible conclusions about the actions of the Mormons and the native population. By not taking a firm position and conclusion leads me to question how complete his research and findings were if he could not even make a conclusive finding. Finally, Leland Gentry's paper, Light on the Mission to the Lamanites, Gentry was more focused upon the Mormon missionary work and the first recorded ideas about westward lands in Utah. He used his letters and journals in his research, thus making it heavily primary sourced. While not focused on Smith or Young, the two missionaries were high-level leaders within the early Mormon Church. The downfall of this paper, though, is its brevity. It had a significant chance to shed light upon the Mormon Israelite beliefs and how they were attempting to convert the native people based off of this assumption. This was the one paper I viewed that came out of BYU, so there was obviously more historical letters and records that could have been used by Gentry to explain the study. His conclusions, though, were almost non-existent in this paper, and it came off more as a simply informative work. Over the past 3 days of research, I have found only scant papers, written typically by the same people, about Mormon-Native interaction in Utah. There is a significant amount of work that study can be done in order to enlarge the understanding of this topic. It appears, though, some of the research that Native Mormon interactions started well before Western expansion, and it was a continuing goal of the Mormons to convert the Native people that they felt were from their scriptures.